This is your government. That means you own it. The owner's manual is the U.S. Constitution.
Move on? We okay to move on? Okay. Jim, I think it's your turn.
To declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water.
All right. We have now gotten into the clauses having to do with common defense. We did a number of clauses having to do with the general welfare, promoting the general welfare, coining money, post roads, those sorts of things, copyrights and all. And now we're going to start going into the common defense. So who is it that declares war?
Congress.
Okay. Now, granting letters of marque and reprisal.
That's legalizing piracy.
It's legalizing piracy against someone that you're at war against.
Right.
Probably the most successful campaign of letters of marque and reprisal was the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, when the Spanish Armada was coming up to England, and the English and Queen Elizabeth are going, how are we going to defend against this? This is this huge number of ships that are about to engulf us. And she's told all of her citizens, go out in your little fishing boats, go out in whatever it is that you've got, and go attack them. And because they were small and swift, and they could get in between these big lumbering things, and they could, throw potatoes at them. I don't know what they did particularly.
Molotov cocktails.
Molotov cocktails.
Board the ships and attack the people on board. Yeah.
Then they were able to defeat the Spanish Armada. It is kind of a militia on the sea. It is people who have other jobs. They are not military people. They're there to defend the country, but they take up arms in order to defend them on the sea.
Kind of the right to hire mercenaries on your behalf.
You might hire them, but usually when you grant a letter of marque and reprisal, like it would have been against the Spanish Armada, it is go out there because you have to save your homeland. And so they go out there to save their homeland. And then the Queen could say, oh, and by the way, if you happen to capture one of those huge warships, you get to keep it. Were you going to say something, Rick?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say that the letters did not grant you immunity when you ran afoul of the opposite country, though. They would still pay you as a pirate.
Okay, good.
Interesting.
All right, now, the next power to provide for the common defense is, Jack, are you?
Yeah, to raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money for that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years.
Good, 2 years, all right. Now, why do you think we have the 2 years rule?
Keep them in check.
Good.
Can't have a standing army that operates indefinitely.
That's right. Yep.
Congressional terms of 2 years.
Congressional terms are 2 years. That's very good. So if the next Congress comes in because the people are getting really unhappy with what's going on, they can cut off the funding.
And it's the House that controls the funding.
And it's the House that controls the funding, exactly right.
My understanding of the original intent of that was to keep from having the standing army to prevent the military from gaining too much power to have conceivable to have a coup.
Right. All right, so that was one thing that they can do to provide for the common defense. And now the next one is,
To provide and maintain a navy.
good. This one doesn't have a time limit of 2
Doesn't
years.
say 2 years.
Why not?
Because Navy needs ships, and you don't crank them up in 2 months.
There is a 40-year shipbuilding cycle. It takes 40 years to build a ship, and then it finally goes to the mothballs, and you got to build a new ship.
So the Navy is not a threat, as a standing army would be, to the American people.
That was the point that I was going to say. Thank you very much.
Read your mind.
Okay. Lily, I want to hear you read.
To make rules for the government and regulation of the land and naval forces.
Good. If you're going to raise them, if you're going to pay them, you also have to make the rules for the governance of them, the regulation of them. Now we get into the militia. Bill, I think you're up. All right.
Provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, comma, suppress insurrection, and repel invasions.
Good. So what's the definition of militia?
Armed citizens.
Armed citizens, exactly right. We might look that one up. All right, we have a definition of militia here.
The body of soldiers in a state enrolled for discipline, but not engaged in actual service except in emergencies, as distinguished from regular troops whose sole occupation is war or military service. The militia of a country are the able-bodied men organized into companies, regiments, and brigades with officers of all grades, and required by law to attend military exercises on certain days only, but at other times left to pursue their usual occupations.
Good. Okay.
The
Good.
Militia Act of, I think, 1792 actually requires all the able-bodied male citizens to turn out for regular training, required them to buy muskets and ammunition, have a certain amount of ammunition prepared, so that they could serve as military forces in a pinch.
Actually, I think today, we think of this term, okay, from the federal defense, the state national guards.
Nope.
We have this thing that is called the militia, and we have a thing over here called the National Guard. Now, by statute, Congress had said this is part of the militia.
However.
However, all right. However, if we read a little bit further on this, it says, we're going to provide for how you're going to call out the militia, and the purpose of calling out the militia is to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrection, and repel invasions. There's 3 reasons. Now, if we send the National Guard over to Afghanistan, as we have, we ask, is that executing a law of the Union?
No.
I'm just asking, is that executing the law of the Union? Is it suppressing an insurrection?
No.
Is it repelling an invasion? Then how do they get to do that?
Well,
If it's part of the militia? Go ahead.
The Army Act made them part of the military.
When they're called up like that, they become a part of the Army.
By the Army Act. They are no longer militia, they are military forces under the U.S.
They're
military.
no longer the National Guard,
Right.
they are the Army. And then when they're let loose, they become National Guard again.
All right? All right?
That's right.
All right, yes.
National Guard is simply a specific subdivision of the militia, which is subject to control by the Army.
Okay.
When was the National Guard originated or referred to as National Guard rather than militia?
I don't recall. We'll look it up real quick. All right, Mike, what did you find?
1903 nationwide. So
And it was called National Guard?
National Guard from 1824 New York, from 1903 nationwide.
Oh, I see. Okay, so they were called the National Guard of New York first, and then
In
they were...
1824.
Okay, in 1824.
That's what this says, as National Guard from 1824 in New York, from 1903 nationwide.
Good. All right, so they're going to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrection, and repel invasion. Let's do the next one also, because this is the last one having to do with the militia.
To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress.
Good, so Congress is going to say, this is how you have to train them, and then it's up to the state to actually make that training occur. The state is the one that determines who the officers are going to be, which keeps them, we would think, somewhat loyal to the state, so that the national government wouldn't be able to turn around and use them against the state. But the Congress is going to provide for organizing it, arming it, disciplining it, and for governing such part of them as are employed in the service of the United States. So they sometimes are in the service of the United States and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're called up, sometimes they're not, as we already talked about. All right, any other comment on the militia, calling up the militia, arming the militia, using the militia? Very good. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. The next part, Article 1, Section 8, Clauses 17 and 18, gives exclusive power to the new government, but are easily misunderstood.